in a valley stitched from mist and memory, where books drifted like leaves and language grew wild on the wind, there lived a woman named Elira, who read aloud to the world. Every morning, just as dawn peeled across the hills and the fog began to lift, Elira stood before the ancient book, a great floating tome with pages that turn themselves. Its cover was worn soft with age, its ink shifting between gold and emerald, as if lit from within by the breath of dreams. Elira's arms would stretch wide, her fingers splayed in reverence, and she would read. She read with the voice of someone remembering the shape of the sun after a long night. Her words filled the sky, soft and strong, blooming into the air like petals. "I do not read for escape," she once told a child who sat wide-eyed in the grass, watching her as if she were conjuring stars. "I read because the words are real, because they remind me that I am." Elira had not always lived in the Valley of Still Pages. She had come from a nearby village, Ovrin, a humble cluster of thatched homes nestled against the crook of a river. The people there were simple folk, content with harvest and hearth. But books had been vanishing from their shelves, words forgotten from their mouths. Over time, stories crumbled, and the light behind their eyes began to dim. Elira, ever curious, ever bright, couldn't bear it. It was her grandmother, a sharp-eyed woman with a braided crown of silver hair, who had taught her to love books. "Words are keys," she would whisper, as she tucked Elira in with a book between them. "They can open doors to what you seek." When her village's last book turned to dust in her hands, Elira left with only a memory and a hunger to find the place where stories still lived. She followed whisper trails and starlit roads until she came to the valley, and there she found it, the book that writes the world. Each day she read, and with each word, the world unfurled more vividly. Where once the land was gray and still, now color returned, moss grew fat on stone, blossoms unfurled in quiet joy, and rivers began to laugh again. The villagers noticed. One day a child wandered into the valley, then another. They came with wide eyes and empty hands, and Elira welcomed them. She read tales of wonder and courage, stories where kindness carved paths through darkness, and where even the smallest voice could wake sleeping giants. Soon the elders came too, drawn by something they couldn't name. They brought with them stories half-remembered, songs half-sung, and Elira wove them back together with care. Through her, they remembered who they had been, and who they might become again. They brought offerings, baskets of berries, carved bookmarks, whispered poems, and made camp at the edge of the valley. Ovrin slowly rekindled its light. They had not just found their reader, they had found their storyteller. Yet not all who watched Elira were human. Coiled in the distant shadows stood a dragon. He was vast, ancient, and green, not the dull olive of swamps, but the deep, verdant shimmer of forest canopies touched by rain. His scales glittered with an inner light, each one a mirror to a different tale. Bravery, sorrow, laughter, loss. His wings were gossamer sheets of moss and memory, vast enough to cover valleys. His eyes, oh, his eyes sparkled gold, catching the light of her every word. The villagers called him many names: beast of the bound pages, guardian of the forgotten, echo of ink, but Elira called him Verdant. Verdant watched Elira not with menace, but with awe. He had been born from her words, though none knew it, not even she. He was the embodiment of her doubt, her power, her grief, and her hope. When she read of ancient wisdom sleeping in the earth, he stirred. When she imagined a world brave enough to speak again, he stretched his wings. Elira had called him into being, but now he stayed for her stories. One moonlit evening, the great green dragon shimmered in the clearing, like a dream made of emerald fire and memory. His golden eyes, wide as suns and just as old, regarded Elira, not with fury, but with recognition. He bowed his massive head low, tendrils of warm mist curling from his nostrils. "You have called me forth, word keeper." Elira stepped forward, her bare feet pressing into the earth, her arms still open, book pages fluttering in the breeze behind her. "I didn't summon you to fight," she said softly. "I summoned you to remember." The dragon tilted his head, smoke curling like question marks from his lips. "Remember what?" "That you were never a beast of destruction," she whispered. "You are the guardian of storylight, keeper of courage, born from every tale told with heart." The dragon's golden eyes flickered. "I've slept for so long, even forgotten my name." Elira placed her hand against his scaled cheek, the surface warm and pulsing faintly, like living leaf veins beneath sunlight. "You were once called Verdant." The name shivered through the trees. The dragon closed his eyes for a moment, a deep breath rising through him, stirring the very clouds. "And you?" he rumbled. "You are not the same girl who used to read by lantern light beneath the whispering birch." "No," Elira said, stepping back. "I am the woman she became, because she believed in every word, even the ones she was afraid to write." A long silence passed between them, filled only with wind and the quiet thrum of gathering power. Then the dragon bowed deeply. "Then let us remember together." Elira's love for reading was not quiet, it was fierce, radiant. To her, books were not escapes. They were reflections of what could be. They were promises waiting to be kept. "Each book I open," she once whispered to Verdant beneath a twilight sky, "unlocks a new piece of me. And if I stop, I'm afraid I'll disappear." Verdant had blinked slowly in reply, a low hum vibrating from his throat like thunder softened by sorrow. She understood. They were both made of words. But not all stories are kind. One day, as she read to the village children a tale of firebirds and forgiveness, the wind stopped. The book, so alive, so willing, froze mid-turn. A silence fell, sharp and aching, and then a blot of ink spilled across the sky. It wasn't real ink, it was absence, a void that swallowed color, sound, even memory. A dark fog began to crawl across the valley floor, blanketing the grass and pressing at the edges of the book. Verdant rose with a roar, wings unfurling like storms. His scales sparked gold and green, but even he stepped back, unsettled. The villagers trembled at the valley's edge. Some tried to call out, but their voices failed. Elira stood her ground, arms open wide, heart hammering beneath her ribs. "What is it?" whispered a girl clutching a flower crown. Elira turned, kneeling so her eyes met theirs. Small faces lined with fear, some clutching scraps of stories, others empty-handed and trembling. "It's forgetting," she said gently. "It grows where stories are silenced." A boy with freckles and ink-stained fingers spoke up. "But we're not strong enough, we're just kids. What can our little words do?" Another girl clutched her story close to her chest. "What if the dark eats our voices too?" Elira looked at each of them, eyes warm but steady. "I know you're scared. I've been scared too. Every time I open a book, a small part of me wonders, will this be the one that fails to light the way? But it never is, because it isn't just the book, it's you. You are the ones bringing it to life." "But what if I read wrong?" whispered the youngest, her voice as faint as falling snow. Elira smiled and took her hand. "There is no wrong when your heart is true. Reading isn't about perfect voices. It's about believing in what your voice can awaken." She stood, arms lifting slowly. You see, the darkness feeds on silence. It grows where stories are left untold. But every word you speak, every line you carry inside you, is a light. You don't have to shout to be powerful. You just have to continue. The children looked around at each other, uncertain but flickering with something. Hope, perhaps, or the memory of it. Elira stepped back and opened her hands. "Read with me," she said. "Not because we are unafraid, but because we know who we are despite the fear. Read and remember. Read and become." Elira stared into the dark and whispered, "It's here." It was the shadow of silence, the very thing she had been reading against all this time. The creeping fade of imagination, the loss of story, and with it, the loss of self. Elira was not alone. From the crowd, children stepped forward. One by one, they opened their hands, and in them were stories, pages folded, tales scribbled in charcoal, poems written on leaves, words they'd written themselves. Elira's eyes shimmered. Together, they stepped forward. Elira opened her mouth, and the children followed. They read, not just with their voices, but with their hearts. And as they did, the darkness shuddered. It did not like light. It did not like voices. Verdant rose behind them, wings casting a shield of emerald protection. With a mighty cry, he unleashed a spiral of orange fire that did not burn, but healed. It carved pathways through the void. In his golden eyes blazed every story Elira had ever told. The book Elira held shivered once and rose into the air, then burst open, pages flying wide, releasing the glow of every word she had ever read into the sky. The dark retreated, and then it was gone. In its place, the castle in the clouds began to descend, not to earth, but into them. Its towers became threads in their thoughts, its light woven into their dreams. It was never meant to be a place, Elira realized. It was a memory of what story could build, a home inside the heart. Elira closed the book gently. "I read, therefore I am," she whispered. Verdant curled beside her, scales aglow. "But we write, therefore we become." And so they did, together.
As a thank you for listening to our story, Elira and the Magical Book is available for download. Click on the link on the description box to get your copy. Thanks for watching. Be sure to enjoy our next tale. Hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to catch our next post. Thanks so much for watching.